Hello, can I welcome everyone to the Child and Family Services Scrutiny panel. Before we start the meeting proper, can I just ask panel members to confirm that they're happy for Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams to continue as convener of the panel for 2025-26? Can you please raise your hands, please? Lovely, thanks very much. I'll now pass over to Councillor Hood-Williams to continue the meeting.
Give me 2 minutes to sort myself out because I was sitting in the wrong place. Pardon? Oh well, that's a better picture of me than that movie anyway. So yeah, you're better off like that. So I wouldn't complain about it. But if I put things the right way around rather than upside down. Okay. I should first of all say thank you for agreeing for me to carry on as convener. I got to agree that is a much better picture of me. If I move that way a little bit. No, it's not there, is it?
And there's no one here to change it either.
Because it could also hide the worst part of me as well then. Well, that's another story. Okay, my pleasure then to welcome everybody to this meeting today of Child and Family Services Scrutiny Performance Panel. Always a pleasure to come to these meetings and see everybody, so big welcome to members and officers. I think everybody who's going to be here is now here anyway. I don't think there's anybody else to come in as such at the moment. And I will move on to item 2 on the agenda then, which is apologies for absence.
We've received apologies from Councillor Mike Day, Wendy Lewis and Kevin Griffiths, Chair.
There is. Item 3 is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest. Anybody got anything they feel they want to declare at this point in time? I can't see any hands going up, so I've got to assume no. In that case, we'll move on to item 4, which I have to say, which is the prohibition of whip votes and the declaration of party whips. Before going to item 5, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. I have to say to members, you've all had a copy of those minutes. You've had a chance to read through them together with the letters as well. Certainly for the minutes, first of all, have you got any comments? I'm not seeing any comments being raised. So...
I don't have any comments, Chair.
Pardon?
I don't have any comments.
Oh, okay, thanks, Yvonne. In that case, are you happy that we approve those minutes and I'll sign them off? Okay, thank you.
Yes, I am, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you, Yvonne. And also the same with the letters as well. You had a chance to look through them, read them. I don't know if you've got any queries coming out of them. I certainly didn't have, so. Okay, we move on to item 7, which is public question time. I assume we haven't had any. Or am I going to have a shock and say you're going to say we have?
No, Chair, we haven't received any.
Okay, which moves us on to the substantive part of the agenda now in that sense. And the first item is the role of Child and Family Services Scrutiny Performance Panel. I think most of you now are pretty experienced in terms of what we've been doing for a fair amount of time. I assume you've read it through, and I'm just wondering whether there's anything that you want to raise in terms of the way we carry out our duties in terms of the scrutiny of child and family services. Are there any comments at all? Or are you happy with what is written within the agenda and we continue along those lines as we have basically for some time now? I can't see any hands went up anywhere, so I assume basically that we are happy with that. I don't really have anything to add to it, but in that case, we will move on to performance monitoring. And I'm just wondering who's going to take us through that. Okay. Over to you then.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to be looking at May's highlight report, which hopefully has all been circulated to you all. So we're going to work through the key highlights for May. So throughout May, again, we saw, although we saw a slight decrease within our single point of contact, it still remained above average and certainly higher than within previous years. In the report for May, you will notice from previous reports, we've actually added some extra information around our Evolve Youth Service to add some further detail to the report and to share that Evolve had been working with 550 young people. Contacts within our early help hub increased during May with an additional 29 contacts. Caseloads, however, did reduce by 68 to 781, with capacity expected to increase with staff returning from leave. 78% of the strategy discussions or meetings that were completed by the service did require a Section 47 inquiry. And the numbers of children on our child protection register reduced to 202, so that reduced by 5 during May. Our looked after children number reduced in May to 468, which was a reduction of 3. 4 children, so we had 10 children cease to be looked after during May. 4 of those children returned home to their parents or relatives, 2 moved on to supported accommodation, 2 turned 18 and 2 moved into special guardianship arrangements. Our fostering team successfully allocated 3 Form Fs to independent assessment team to be progressed. It was likely that these would be ready for consideration at the July fostering panel. Due to the demand that the team were considering an additional panel to prevent any delays. The Western Bay Adoption Service had undertaken lots of matching work during May. They were experiencing, however, low numbers of inquiries and low numbers of inquiries translate into approvals. Therefore, they were continuing to prioritise marketing and family finding work. The family finding support or the family support service saw an increase in referrals with hidden harm team, experiencing double their usual volume, and continued high referral rates for the jigsaw midwifery and parenting services, reflecting the rise in pregnancy-related cases across our supported care planning teams. The family support teams also have been actively involved in multi-agency discussions around, hang on, my screen's set, around the impact of substance use on parenting and pregnancy, with a focus on identifying effective practices and collaborative solutions. Substance use is also a key theme that our service quality unit have been experiencing during May, with concerns around mental health and cocaine use. Teams across the service reported that while staffing challenges remain, there had been some movement, with staff returning from maternity or sick leave and some new starters expected to join during May. And lastly, the Learning and Innovation team had been focused on completing the Welsh Government annual returns, which I'm pleased to say have been completed and finalised for the year, and looked after child census. as well as supporting the National COVID Inquiry to return a witness statement on behalf of Julie Davis, which had taken priority for the team. And as a result, that delayed our trend analysis for May. And that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that. We're not intending, presumably, to go through these graphs in detail.
No, I wasn't, unless there are any specific questions. Otherwise, hopefully they're pretty self-explanatory for you.
Well, in that case, what I will do at this point in time is throw it open to members. I don't know, did you want to add anything, Julie? Sorry, first.
Thanks, Chair. This continues to be an evolving report in its format, and what I hope to bring in future meetings is more detail about how our performance relates to the changes that we're making in the service to achieve our longer term vision, because our longer term vision is predicated on prevention early intervention offers so that we support children and families to stay at home, but also where we children need to become looked after, that we have sufficient in-house provision to be sure that they stay local. So there's some, I think the data would, it would be helpful if we crafted the data around that so you can quite clearly see how we're progressing with that longer term vision. So it'll be the same sort of data, but maybe presented a little bit differently. But it's really pleasing for me anyway to see that we have firm foundations, particularly in prevention, early intervention, through our early help hubs, through our youth service, through our family support services, and they're working with high volumes of children, young people and families. And equally pleasing to see there's some energy being created in relation to recruiting more foster carers for within Swansea, because a couple of months ago I think we weren't seeing many numbers, but we are seeing more interest now, and the campaign's really gathering some pace, and we've managed to create some extra capacity to ensure that we can approve people in a timely way. So yeah, that's all I'd perhaps like to add at this stage. It's we're very busy. We're delivering business as usual, so we're safe and effective, but also looking to develop and implement change where it's needed, so we continue to improve.
I think I understand where you want to go with that, and the way that we carry out this sort of scrutiny, if you like. The only slight concern I would have is obviously when you're looking at performance, which is basically our main role, apart from where you're going, don't get me wrong, we do need to see some figures to make sure that we can see that performance is being maintained or enhanced, whichever the case may be, hopefully enhanced, because you're very good at doing that normally anyway. So that's the only comment I think I'd make at this stage. I know I had a few questions coming out to this. I don't know if any other members would have had any questions coming out. I'm not seeing any hands going up. So obviously, we're very satisfied with the performance we have. I haven't really got a lot in that sense as myself that I was picking up that I wasn't happy about, but I can put on my glasses to see what it was. And that's otherwise what I'm talking about. I think in terms of the early parts of the report, it's fairly simple and straightforward. A little bit concerned, I think, about the single assessments completion time, which wasn't a particularly good figure, I don't think, this month. That's on page 13 of the report.
Within timescales and over timescales. I think what we, and Louise may be able to comment, but in terms of those that may be over timescales, it may be over the timescale by a day, as opposed to numbers of days. And I guess the other thing to comment upon, Louise, I don't know whether you got the details, is that yeah, we've because we've been doing a lot of data cleansing, we're actually able to bring more clarity to the data in terms of how many days completion for assessments. The other thing I would add in terms of the context is that we have employed a larger number of newly qualified social workers than we would ordinarily. They are very high quality, but obviously they're in their first year of practice, and I guess that may impact upon, because they're being supported to deliver the highest quality assessments. So we want to make sure the assessment's right rather than focusing on the 42-day timeline. And that's the narrative that I have with our lead inspector when we meet. But what we don't capture at the minute is how many days over things might be and the context within the teams about how often they're required to complete their assessments. Is there anything you can add, Louise?
Yeah, I think we tend to see this rise around this time of year, and we are doing, as Julie said, a lot of data cleansing ahead of the annual reports. So sometimes the longer assessments that we'll have a small number of longer assessments knock out some of our other figures. So I think what we'd like to do in terms of developing the report is give that clarity around understanding where that is and what those specific, perhaps there might only be 1 or 2 cases that are running over, because there is an ongoing process, but that data cleansing does tend to knock us out if we look back historically every year, and it isn't necessarily a concern. It is just something that as we go back through individual cases, it may just take some of the time thresholds out.
I think I was just concerned that the average number of days to complete the assessment had gone from 43 to 72, which is pretty significant in the scheme of things. One of the disadvantages we have at the moment with those figures is that we haven't got the trends. So we don't know whether that's unusual or abnormal, or whether it's consistent with normal practice year on year, if you know what I mean. And that's, I think that's where it's important that if we are looking at performance data, we do see the trends, to see see exactly what's happening over a period of time, rather than these 2 monthly figures, as I commented before, I think.
Yeah, and I think we do try and produce an annual report, don't we? But we've been knocked back a little bit on that with the demands from the unexpected demand from the COVID inquiry. So that would then show you that look back over the year, and you'll be able to see the trends. But because certainly they're probably key, because to come back to your earlier point about, I think, some of the basic key performance indicators, so you're assured that we're continuing to provide a safe and effective service, we would still include in here. And some of those are the corporate PIs that we have to report upon as well. So some of that, what I might call basics, it's very important that we continue to report on those into scrutiny panels, so we can perhaps make sure that we highlight those quite specifically. But we would pull in the annual report, wouldn't we? But we could perhaps, for some of the core component data, we could produce some of those charts that we have for others, so we can understand what that looks like over time. But I think that the underlying message is that when we do the annual returns and we're then looking back at a year's worth of data, that cleansing will then, we catch up on all of that in 1 month, and that I think is a skewed picture. So that's just the note that we would put on, and perhaps we can put that in future reports.
Yeah, just to add, I think our annual report is coming in November. It's been agreed now because we've got a bit of a pushback this year, as you say, with the COVID inquiry request. But yes, we would look to give you that trends in those, and we will absolutely build around any information you need. We're happy, obviously, to continue to build, because some of those trends, you say, when you look at it, it is alarming when you see it's what, an extra 60-70%, isn't it? However, I think if we go back, which I will have a look into going back to see what it's been like year on year, where we're doing that cleansing, hopefully that can provide some assurance that we do see that pattern, but it is down to just a few small cases that push it up rather than it being a general pattern.
Sorry, I forgot to put that on again, didn't I? What I was saying was that's the advantage with trends. You can see whether the information is normal or whether it's abnormal, and where it's abnormal, it obviously indicate you an area that you need to have a look at and see what's going on, I guess. I was going to take you to page 40. Which is page 20 of the report, and the young people's advisors. I'm trying to work out what I was concerned about. I think I was concerned more about the number allocated and the number in review, and where we are in respect of that, and what exactly that means.
So what that means is young people that once they, I think it's 21, then our statutory duty looks a little bit different. So then we keep in touch with young people. So we make sure we make contact with them on a regular basis. But they have it's their choice as to whether or not they want to stay in touch with us. So by keeping them in review, it means that we don't forget that we need to keep in touch with young people. And some of them, so some of those older ones, you can see the numbers are quite low. 1 for 23-year-old and 5 for 22 and 19 for 21. They have asked for additional support, but so a lot of the 43 and 48 said we're okay, thanks, sort of thing. So we make that offer, and then if young people need additional support, we happily can signpost or offer that support directly if that's feasible.
If I go to page 47, particularly residential care, where are we with that at the moment? Because you're talking about 50 people, I think, approximately in residential care. Where on earth are they?
Apart from one young person that's in Secure, everybody else is in Wales. And a high proportion are in Swansea, and some of them, I think, as of this report, there are either 3 or 4 that were in our current in-house provision. So that's part of our longer term vision about how we develop more in-house residential beds.
I understand the pressures you're under to ensure that you do that. But it's obviously proven not a simple task to achieve it, I don't think, in terms of getting suitable properties which you can.
It's the suitable properties,
modify.
It's also the time it takes to develop, dependent on the condition of the property. And the amount of work that's required to bring the property up to specification that satisfies the regulator. So some properties are quicker to bring online than others. So we're exploring a number of properties at the moment that we're in the process of nearing completion of purchase, and it's then bringing on board the corporate services to support us so the property becomes available, is refurbished and renovated to be able to be used. So that's it can take up upwards of 18 months from purchase to, depending on the condition of the property, to it being available to be used, having been registered and passed CRW's RISCA regulations.
I was just wondering how much additional pressure it puts on the department in these circumstances at the present time. And I think I guess I've said to you before, Louise, that that's a message presumably you are taking back.
To Welsh Government, and yes, absolutely, but and particularly that they're still sort of working out the specifics, I guess, aren't they, of how it goes through. But yeah, definitely that's the message, and I think everyone's on board with the principle of eliminate profit, but it's just how that's done in practice, and how much funding there is to go along with it as well.
You're not alone in that, obviously. Page 49, very quickly then, adoption system struggling.
Where we have challenges in adoption at the moment is it's similar to where we were and probably still are in some way with foster carers, in that interest in becoming prospective adopters. We're trying to understand why there's less interest. So that's something that we're analysing at the moment, but it doesn't just affect Swansea. It's probably a UK issue, a UK challenge, and there's lots of factors that are influencing that. There are less children that are being put forward for adoption because there are other routes for permanence now, such as special guardianship orders, for example. And every local authority is doing all they can to support children to remain at home. So kinship arrangements are another route where we support that. So that, and also I think we've traditionally followed the same method to try and attract prospective adopters, and people are different now, people's circumstances are different, and there are more opportunities, and the face of adoption has changed radically, I'd suggest, over the last 10 years. So the people that might have thought about adoption 10 years ago, maybe not the same, their view on adoption needs to change, because adoption is different now in terms of, for example, contact with birth families, what that might look like, how we support birth parents, how we support children who are adopted to remain knowledgeable and hopefully have future contact with siblings or wider family members. So there's lots of factors, but we've had, since this report was produced, we've had the further report at the Regional Adoption Management Board, and we have had generated a flurry of interest, which has resulted in a number of assessments going through. So there are positive signs there, but it's understanding what the picture for adoption needs to look like for our region, but also for Swansea, and what the demand might look like going forward, bearing in mind everything that's going on in relation to our vision and future plans.
It's something that we will have to continue to keep an eye on, but I'm sure you're doing that far more than we are at the moment anyway. One final question. How many agency workers have we got at the moment?
4.
So there's still very low numbers then.
Yeah.
David will know what I'm talking about, David, won't you?
Absolutely, Chair. You always pick the key indicators to monitor.
And just to say that for 3 of those, we have recruited permanent posts, so they will only be with us for another couple of 3 months, depending on how quickly we can get people into post. And then the other one is covering maternity, and that person's returning to work. So they hopefully next time I come, I'll be saying maybe 1. I'll go with 1.
Okay. But I can remember the days when there's sort of 40 foreign agency workers in Swansea and struggles there with that.
Chair, can I ask a question, please? So that's possible.
Sorry, Mark, I didn't see your hand up.
No problem at all. Very impressed with the report, pretty extensive, and in general, things are heading in the right direction, and we're very grateful for that. But like you, Chair, page 13 does stand out like a sore thumb. With the average number of days from 43 to 72. I wonder if we had any information about June's figures yet, whether it's heading in the right direction, back down to the 40s again, or it's a bit early to say. Thank you.
We do have June's figures, and as it happens, it's in my inbox, so I can quickly open it. I think my recollection is yes, it is an improved picture, but I can quickly open that. And unless Louise is quicker than I am.
I'm working on it. One sec.
It's going to PNFM next week.
Oh yeah, so
Yeah.
I've got it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Not even there.
Sorry, it's a bit slow to open. Sure. Right, okay. Just bear with. Yes, so we're at 51 days for the average number of days to complete a single assessment in June.
Oh, that's
And
a considerable reduction.
Yeah.
So that's.
And also just, sorry, Councillor.
No, it's fine. That's fine. That's a positive. I'm very happy with that.
Thank you. And just to add to that, we actually we completed more assessments that month as well. So we completed about 40. We completed about 40 more assessments, and the average still was reduced to 51 days for completion.
Fantastic. Back to normal-ish. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay. If that's the end in terms of the actual performance itself.
Sorry, and Louise did remind me, and I couldn't understand what she was saying. But I thought it might be helpful, and it's positive news in that we've recently had an inspection of one of our residential children's homes, Hill TD, and we had the report last week, and it's excellent news. So CIW have introduced ratings now, which are published as part of the report, and so there are 4 categories. We had 3 excellents and 1 good, and we're challenging the 1 good because we think it should be 4 excellent. But the final report, so subject to that challenge and the report being published, because they will now go on the CIW website, which is another new thing that was introduced recently, which I think is good. Then I'm pleased to report that we get our residential services are providing excellent outcomes for children looked after. So we've got 2 homes. Yeah, we've got Tynant and Hill TD. Hill TD is just a 1-bed provision, and that's the one that's recently expected. There are 4 outcome measures for that homes are inspected against, and the top category is excellent. So we had 3 excellents and 1 good, but we think it should be 4 excellent.
I wouldn't expect anything else.
Yeah. Excellent. Well done.
Pardon?
Just saying excellent. Well done, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Mark. What I am going to come back to for a minute now is that I don't know if anybody saw a report in the press about a family, and particularly a mother, who was arrested in relation to an incident. And there was an article around about the 19th of July. Julie can describe it much better than I can, and I certainly asked her to have a look and see what the situation had been in terms of Swansea and how we reacted to that case. I have to say I was very satisfied with what I had coming back, but perhaps you'd like to explain it for members, Julie.
Yes, of course, Chair. It was the headline was quite emotively written, as they sometimes are. Children with rotten teeth and infected wounds found living in horror in a Welsh home. So I looked back, and because I couldn't remember, but the family were first. So this became before the criminal court earlier this summer, but that took 2 years because they became to our attention in June 23. And we acted very swiftly. The children's names were on the register later that month. And then in terms of the police investigation and our investigation, again, there's very swift action from both us and the police in that the mother was arrested very quickly and the children became looked after. So within about 4 to 5 weeks of us being aware of the circumstances, we acted appropriately and the children remain in the care of the local authority. The referral came to us from the school. The children, all the necessary child protection statutory procedures were followed. The multi-agency working with both police and health resulted in us being able to understand the circumstances of the children very well, and that led us to removing them using police powers. That meant that we could remove them immediately and take children to a place of safety. So I was able to reassure Paxton, hopefully, that we took decisive action by using the child protection register immediately, but the children were out of the home within a couple of days, in effect, and they remain. That's their plan for permanence is that they remain in our care, and we are planning to have some reflective conversations to understand, in relation to the referral coming in, then whether a referral could have come in earlier or not. Could we become aware earlier on? So that I think that'll be helpful for us to understand that situation for that family at that time, see if there's anything we can share with other agencies and ourselves about things that we could think about doing differently going forward together.
Okay, thank you, Julie. I saw that and I was a little bit concerned as to where we picked that up as from a departmental point of view, but obviously from what Julie's already told you, we were well aware of it from the start and we followed it through. If I go back again to 2009, that wasn't a situation, that I just want to be satisfied in my own mind that we weren't going down that route, and I was very grateful for the response that I got in that sense, because obviously there was really no problem in that respect. I'm going to move on to another set of figures now, just to there were some child abuse figures around last week in the press. I think it was something like about 4,000 in Wales, about 253 in Swansea. I think those figures are probably 3 or 4 years old, but that's what I saw. I don't know really to what extent we are aware of the number of children that are undergoing abuse or experiencing abuse in Swansea. Are we picking them all up, and where are we in that respect by and large, or are we reliant obviously on other people to tell you, to make sure that you've got those people on your radar?
I'm thinking that's probably the children that are on the child protection register. That sounds about right from a couple of months ago, and that 4,000 figure sounds about your Wales figure to me. We do rely on referrals in terms of understanding what's going on in family homes, and a lot of those referrals come from the police and education. And I think our continuum of need has been really helpful for schools in particular, and perhaps health visitors and school nurses to understand when to refer in, but also how to understand what signs of abuse may look like. But we should never be complacent, because it's really important that we still continue to be alive to the different forms of abuse and how they may take place. Of exploitation is a good example. Welsh Government have put out for consultation a national strategy they're planning to produce on child sexual abuse. And if you look through that now, and perhaps 5 years ago, you wouldn't have had the list of different types and different forms of abuse that perhaps you're seeing in this document. So it's quite right that we, as a profession, and I don't just mean social services, but all professions, remember to refresh our understanding in the context and thinking and looking forward. So I think we would say from the weekly safeguarding meetings we have with multi-agency partners, looking at safeguarding cases, children that go onto the register. I think we're confident in the strength of our threshold decision making, but also our threshold in relation to children that should remain on or come off the register. We also have weekly referral meetings where we look at referrals that are coming in to see whether they are the right, they meet threshold for coming in. And again, we've got mechanisms to feed back. So I think we've got a really good two-way, strong multi-agency process through local mechanisms, but also the regional safeguarding board around helping people understand the importance of being curious, I guess, and just referring things in, picking the phone and having a conversation, particularly schools. We really encourage that. You don't need to necessarily refer, but give us a call, we'll have a conversation, and then we'll give you some advice. And then they can then make a formal referral if they feel that that's the case. So but I think what we're seeing with our child protection registration numbers coming down is that we are getting stronger and better at the front door of being able to support families to create safety where that's possible to achieve without the need to go on the child protection register, because that's less intrusive, through our integrated safeguarding hub, for example, and the work that we do through our domestic abuse hub. So I think it's generally a very positive picture in Swansea, but as I say, we should never be complacent, and we should always seek to improve our knowledge and understanding. But we do have we have strengths in both our local training and development offer, but also our regional training and development officer around safeguarding and child protection.
Okay, thank you for that, Julie. I see, Yvonne, you've got a question in this respect?
Yes, I have. Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that, Julie. I was just wondering, nowadays, when we talk about abuse, does that include children that are trafficked or children that are groomed?
Yes, absolutely can. So it does. And that
so we don't keep the figures separately anymore. Sorry.
I think in terms of categories of registration on the child protection register, it doesn't go down to that granular detail. But in terms of us looking at the reason for referral and then helping us to come up with a good safety plan and a good care and support plan when they're on the register, we would look at that level of detail in relation to the right plan for the child. So we would, in terms of the reason for referral, well, I'm not sure, I'm looking at Louise now, whether we capture that granular level of detail, because the system at the minute, we have to record children on the register under specific, is it 4 or 5 categories, isn't it, of abuse?
Yeah, so we record under specific categories of abuse, and then we've got the risk outside of the home process of recording and reporting as well. So that is a lot of, they don't necessarily sit under the child protection register, but they are registered, and we do register the levels of potential abuse or neglect, and that's reported as part of our children in need of care and support numbers and figures, rather than, and this is a national issue, rather than just necessarily under our child protection register, because as Julie said, there's very specific categories for the child protection register, which is intrafamiliar abuse rather than the risks outside the home.
Sue, you had a question?
Yes, it's about on page 11. You've got safeguarding, passed to an integrated safeguarding hub from 11 in April to 40 in May. And then also on that page, a number of contacts during the month which have been supported by integrated safeguarding hub from 9 to 27. So what does that indicate? The type of
So my recollection,
issues?
My recollection from that month is we had 2 or 3 large families that we were dealing with that came in, that then those children ended up on the child protection register. I'm talking families where there were children of 5+ in the household, and that I think that in the main accounts for that particularly high number in that month. Am I right in my memory, Louise?
You are indeed, with some bigger family groups that came through
Yeah.
the front door.
Yeah.
And it only takes one or two larger families for it to reflect. And when you look at it, you think of obviously the individual children, but if you've got a family of maybe 4, 5, 6, it's, yeah.
I'm going to go back in history again a little bit, I'm afraid, because certainly at the time when we were roundabout in coming out of special measures, the Swansea Safeguarding Board was set up specifically with the Jack Straw as the chief executive, the Swansea Superintendent, Mark Mathias, and I can't remember who the one was from Health. Now, you might, David, I don't off the top of my head. But that proved to be very effective, ensuring that we had the cooperation between those various services in terms of identifying children who are at risk, possible abuse, and certainly seem to do a fantastic job in that respect. I think probably about 7 or 8 years down the road, that was then disbanded because it was decided to set up the West Glamorgan Safeguarding Board. And I know we had concerns specifically as the scrutiny panel in that respect, whether that would dilute the impact. But I would ask the question just to be absolutely certain of this. You're quite satisfied that we have the right degrees of cooperation now between yourselves, police and the health boards, and possibly education as well, in respect of identifying abuse as soon as possible.
I am chair in terms of our partnership working and interagency working, and I think I just wanted to say that acknowledge that we have probably a sector leading safeguarding board in relation to understanding what's happening in communities and how well agencies are or aren't responding to issues and concerns, both adults and children. So we're recognised as introducing improved ways of sharing information electronically, so we can be able to see quite readily whether there's been a contact or somebody's open to social services, or whether there's been a police call out, and that improves the timeliness of responses by pulling in more information. So we recognise nationally as developing a data set that helps us understand what's going on in our region, looking at particularly key indicators and thinking about things in a very creative way, but also focused on a very much a person-centred way. So there's lots of exciting developments from a regional safeguarding board that we're leading the way on for Wales, I would suggest. And it's great that we're part of that because we benefit from that locally as well as regionally.
The only thing I think I'll say to that is, as usual, you've done a very good job of satisfying us that the right proposal in place. I don't know whether members of the committee would agree with that, but I can see a lot of nodding heads around, so I'm really grateful for that. And I think we have to ask these questions, but generally speaking, we really are quite pleased with the answer we get. So at that point in time, I think, unless anybody's got any other questions in terms of performance monitoring, we seem to have gone a long way from the actual report now, but that's another story. Thank you very much, and I will move on to item 9. Sorry, item 10, which is a draft work plan. Members have had a chance to look at it. Hopefully officers have as well, to see if they think there's any gaps in there. Any comments from anybody in that respect, or are you reasonably happy that we proceed basically along the route with this?
I guess just to connect to the comments I just made about the regional safeguarding board, we can bring some of that detail here to help bring some, to help you understand what I've been talking about basically in terms of why I'm confident and reassured that we've got a lot of exciting developments underway that are going to make a significant difference to safeguarding across the region. We can include some of that detail in that update from that's in the September meeting.
Yes, it's on that.
Yeah. So it's quite timely that I can bring that detail to the next meeting.
Okay, fine. Are there any other comments? David?
I just checked something with Julie. We had some discussion about the timing of scrutiny looking at corporate
Corporate
parenting, but has that all been sorted now? I haven't looked at
I
that.
think
I don't know.
I was just, as I left to come to this meeting, I asked Kath just to check because I hadn't heard anything back formally. So what we're talking about, Chair, is that the annual Corporate Parenting Board report is due to come here in November.
Well, it's got February on the work plan.
Oh, February, sorry, I'm thinking
but,
of,
but yeah, we were aware that it also needs to go to council, which
Council.
it hasn't done previously. The annual corporate parenting report is supposed to go to council. I think we said
September.
September, October, yeah. But then it's not on this work plan until February, and we weren't sure whether it needed to come here first before it went to council. So we just need to work that out.
We did wonder whether there might be value in bringing forward the Corporate Parenting Board annual report, maybe a meeting, because we were thinking maybe it could go to full council in November. We were just waiting for confirmation that that was accepted.
Yeah, it may be able to be changed, but whether it can or not, I think there's more of a logic of it doesn't need to be before it goes to council, but it would be more sensible to have it more closely aligned. So you'll have some opportunity to question the chair in council, but you always have more opportunity here because you just got that more detailed. So I'd bring them closer together one way or another. If you can coordinate those timetables, that would be good, but it probably just needs some discussion outside the room, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, I'll leave that with Liz now, and she'll talk to people as necessary to see how we rearrange that if members are happy with that. Yeah, okay. I'll be looking with interest at the report coming from there, because I'll be interested to see what the comparisons are on education and what results come out of that. But that's another story again, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get the figures that I want, but I'll still keep asking for them. I think it's something that we seriously ought to be looking at in that sense. But that's something perhaps somebody ought to take to the education scrutiny performance panel as well. Okay, if there are no other points to be raised, thank you to Louise and Julie for the inputs today. Obviously, we've gone away reasonably satisfied again, so thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for everybody who's contributed, and see you at the next meeting. Thank you.